What if I told you that teaching sucks? You see, approximately 50% of teachers quit the teaching profession worldwide after less than 5 years on the job, just 5. But the question is why? Why do teachers quit? Welcome to Challenging Class, the podcast where we tackle the realities of modern education, one thought provoking conversation at a time. I'm your host, Cecil, an 18-year educator with a passion for pulling back the curtain on what happens in our classrooms, schools, and beyond. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, a current or former student, the state of education affects us all. But how often do we get an honest glimpse of the challenges, innovations, and systemic realities shaping it? And that's what this show is all about. In this episode, we'll talk about why education matters more than ever and give you a preview of what's ahead on this journey. Think of this as the foundation for the conversations we're about to build together. I remember looking at my own teachers back in the day. Some of them didn't even know what Facebook was. They were good people, trying their best, but they couldn't even teach us how to send an email. They were utterly unprepared to help us navigate a world that was changing faster than anyone could imagine. Fast forward to today, and as a teacher and a parent myself, I see the same struggle playing out. There are incredible educators out there, but so many of us are struggling to keep up. Coding? Most teachers barely know what it is, let alone teach it. Social media? Forget about it. It has no place in education, they say. Why? Because it's a foreign language to many. How about online learning platforms, tools like Canva or ChatGPT? A lot of teachers are left to figure this out on their own. And that's what I've had to do, teach myself. Not just for the sake of my own growth, but to actually prepare my students for today's reality and hopefully for tomorrow's reality too. Can we look at TikTok, for example, as a way to help students see how social media can be a tool to create opportunities, build communities, and share their voices? Can we use platforms like Canva to teach kids design skills that they can use in the real world? The answer is a resounding yes. But here's the thing. Teachers are randomly doing this on their own. No one trains them for this, and there's certainly no system-wide plan to prepare kids for these realities. And that leads us to the bigger question. Has our education system as a whole transformed itself to deal with the realities of 2025? Social media creators, for instance, are some of the most influential people today. But are schools teaching kids how to be part of that world in a healthy and productive way? In countries like India, students are coders. They create apps that are used globally. While they innovate and contribute directly to the tech space, many other students are left becoming mass consumers of these tools rather than learning how to build them. If we can't even begin to address something as ubiquitous as social media or coding, how are we preparing our students for a future shaped by AI, where rapid tech advancement and continuous innovation are the norm? This podcast exists to ask those tough questions, to challenge this system, and to explore what meaningful education looks like in the 21st century. It's about demystifying what happens inside our schools, highlighting what works, and being brutally honest about what doesn't. Because if we're not preparing kids for the real world, then what are we doing? Education is something that we all experience in some form, but few of us take the time to actually examine it critically. What's working? What isn't? And most importantly, why? Let's take a deeper look at the challenges and opportunities in education today. Education today is in a state of flux. Teachers are burnt out, many students are disengaged, and parents are frustrated trying to make sense of a system that they once thought they knew. So let's ask the hard question. Are we truly preparing students for the future? Or are we simply maintaining an outdated system that no longer serves them? Think about it. School is supposed to be this foundation for success. It should be equipping kids with the skills they need to navigate adulthood, the workforce, and an ever changing world. But if that's the case, why do so many students feel lost the moment they step out of the classroom? Why do employers constantly say that young people are unprepared for the workforce? And why are so many teachers walking away from the profession in record numbers? As an 18-year veteran teacher, I would say in 2025, our schools face a unique set of challenges today. Here are 5 key challenges in education today. Number 1, the mental health crisis in schools. The classroom has become more than just a place of learning. It's a goalpost for student well-being. While rates of mental health issues among students have skyrocketed, teachers are often the first line of defense. But here's the problem. Teachers are not mental health professionals. They care deeply, but they're overwhelmed. According to a 2024 study by the National Education Association, 67% of teachers reported dealing with significant student mental health challenges on a daily basis. Imagine being a teacher trying to deliver a math lesson while also managing a student having an anxiety attack, another student completely disengaged due to depression, and a classroom dynamic that's a combination of high-achieving and immature students, all with their own set of academic and emotional needs. Folks, it's not just about academics anymore. This is classroom triage. Number 2, classroom behavior and student engagement. The ability to hold a student's attention today is harder than ever. Disruptive behavior, shortened attention spans, and increased screen dependency are changing the way that classrooms function. The traditional sit still and listen approach simply doesn't work anymore. According to a 2023 study by the American Federation of Teachers, 59% of educators reported feeling burnt out. But burnt out is not about just feeling exhaustion. It's about frustration, about feeling like no matter how hard you try, you're set up to fail. Teachers today aren't just instructors. They're counselors, social workers, tech support, clerical workers, and sometimes even substitute parents. They're expected to manage mental health crises, handle increasing behavioral issues, and somehow still teach a curriculum that can often feel out of touch with the world that students actually live in. Let's take Jessica Gentry, a former kindergarten teacher from Virginia, as an example. She walked away from her teaching career after 12 years, posting a now viral video explaining why. Her reasons? Overcrowded classrooms, unrealistic expectations, a lack of support, and the gut-wrenching feeling that she was failing her students. Not because she wasn't a great teacher, but because the system was broken. And this is not just an American issue. This is happening globally. The hashtag #TeacherQuitTalk has racked up millions of views, filled with teachers sharing their experiences, venting about low pay, and explaining the impossible demands placed on them. The pattern is clear. When we burn out our educators, we weaken the entire foundation of education. Now let's flip the script. If teachers are struggling, what about students? A 2022 Pew Research study found that 70% of high school students feel unprepared for the workforce. 70%. That means that despite years of schooling, the majority of students don't believe they're gaining the skills they need for real life. Just think about that for a second. We tell kids to work hard, get good grades, you can go to college, but what happens when the education system itself isn't equipping them with the skills that truly matter? The truth is, many students are disengaged because they don't see the relevance in what they're learning. They ask questions like, when will I ever use this? And too often, we don't have a good answer. Meanwhile, in countries like India, students are learning to code in elementary school and developing apps that have real-world applications. Here, We're still debating the social media issue and deciding whether AI should actually have a place in our classrooms. If we fail to evolve education to match the pace and change of this rapidly evolving world, we're not just failing students, we're actually setting them up to struggle. The double-edged sword of technology. Technology is both a blessing and a curse in modern education. On the one hand, AI-driven tools and digital platforms offer us unprecedented opportunities for personalized learning. On the other hand, teachers are left struggling to adapt to this evolving technology while also battling the distraction it brings. Here's an example. AI tools like ChatGPT can revolutionize learning, but they can also create ethical dilemmas. Students can use AI to complete assignments, teachers may or may not recognize, and the cycle continues. Now, this raises obvious questions about academic integrity and critical thinking. But the fact of the matter is that teachers are playing catch up and trying to incorporate AI in a way that enhances learning rather than replaces effort. But who trains them to do this? You guessed it, no one. We used to say that teachers should integrate technology into the classroom. Now we have to ask, are teachers even equipped to keep up with the tech revolution happening right in front of their faces? Number 4, teacher burnout and the multi-role crisis. Let's be clear, teaching isn't just about teaching anymore. Today's educators are expected to be counselors, social workers, technology experts, clerical workers, managers, interviewers, mediators, supervisors, accountants, record keepers, coaches, the HR department, event planners, data entry clerks, report writers, fundraisers, and oh yeah, between all of this, they need to find some time to teach. It's simply unsustainable. Teachers are burning out at record rates, and the pipeline for new educators is shrinking. A 2023 study by the American Federation of Teachers found that 59% of teachers reported feeling burnt out, with many citing workload and a lack of instructional support. The rise of movements like hashtag teacher quit talk shows just how many educators feel pushed to their breaking point. When the people responsible for shaping young minds are struggling to stay afloat, it's a warning sign that we simply can't ignore. Number 5, parental expectations and the communication gap. And what about parents? They're supposed to be partners in education, right? But many feel completely disconnected. How many of you parents have stared at your child's report card trying to decipher vague comments like needs improvement and wondering what that actually means for their future? The education system loves to use its buzzwords, but when it comes to giving parents actionable insight into their child's progress, it often falls short. Parents want to support their kids, but how can they do that when they don't fully understand what's happening in the classroom? And the truth is, many parents want to support their child's learning, but don't always know how. What's worse is that parents often feel blindsided when they find out that their child is struggling, whether academically, socially, or even behaviorally, because communication from schools isn't always clear or proactive. On the other hand, teachers are overwhelmed managing large class sizes and multiple responsibilities. So making consistent, individualized communication with parents is often difficult. This dichotomy has led us to what I call the expectation gap, the accountability struggle, and the digital dilemma. In the expectation gap, many parents assume that schools will fully prepare their child for the real world, while teachers see firsthand the gaps in the system. This disconnect leads to frustration when students graduate without essential life skills, when they struggle with motivation or face behavioral issues that weren't properly addressed early on. This leads us to the accountability struggle. Some parents expect teachers to handle all aspects of their child's learning and personal development, while some teachers feel that parental involvement is lacking. This creates tension. Teachers may feel unsupported, while parents feel left out of their child's education. And finally, the digital dilemma. Many schools have moved to online communication platforms for sharing grades, assignments, and updates. But not all parents check or even understand these systems. This can leave a lot of families feeling even more disconnected, especially those who may not have consistent access to technology. Number 6, the equity gap. Who gets left behind? Not all students have access to the same opportunities, and we know this, whether it's due to socioeconomic status, learning disabilities, or language barriers. Too many of our kids are slipping through the cracks. According to a 2024 UNESCO report, students from low-income backgrounds are 40% less likely to have advanced coursework or extracurricular learning opportunities. In some schools, students are learning to code and build AI models, while in others, students don't even have access to updated textbooks. This growing divide raises the critical question: are we really giving every child a fair shot at success? This equity issue extends beyond academics. It touches on the content that students are exposed to in the classroom, including the growing trend of book bans, the selective portrayal of history in textbooks, and the rise of identity politics in schools. These issues complicate the educational landscape so much and influence how students understand themselves, their own cultures, and of course, their place in society. These equity issues are compounded by huge disparities in both resources and opportunities. They also contribute to a broader sense of inequity in education. Here at Challenge in Class, we'll strive to address those issues head on. So here's where we are. Teachers are exhausted, students are struggling, and the system of education is dealing with a myriad of pressures. But here's the thing. In all of this, education is also evolving. New learning models, technology, and advocacy efforts are pushing for change. The question is, will we listen? And will we be open to change? In the upcoming episodes, we'll explore possible solutions and highlight educators and innovators who are challenging the status quo. Because one thing is clear, sticking to the same outdated approaches are not working anymore. This podcast is about exploring what's possible and tackling what's holding us back. I invite you to join the conversation. What's your experience with education? Whether a parent, student, or teacher, what do you wish schools did differently? Please like, share, follow, and subscribe. All of that good stuff. I'm still learning this here with you, and like a teacher, we're always learners, forever learners. I'm gonna do that again. Please like, share, follow, and subscribe.